Welcome everyone to the Dashboard Dojo. So glad to see you. For those of you who've joined us before, so glad to see you back. Today we're going to do part 2 in the Digging into Report Types series. Today is a hands-on session, and if this is your first time in the Dojo, please use the link at the bottom of the screen, the Dojo setup link, to just take a couple moments and set up a special kind of dev work. That just ensures that we're all using the same environment for the session today. So great to see more of you joining in. Welcome back for those of you who've been here before. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so our agenda today, this slide looks very familiar. I'll just spend a minute telling you who I am. We'll dive right into Waza and Shiai. Today is mostly hands-on exercises. This is sort of a perfect topic for that, to have most of the time focused on just building stuff. We'll talk about upcoming Dojo topics. I'll ask if you have ideas for upcoming Dojo topics. So if you're thinking of things, share a little bit about OpFocus's events, and then we'll spend time on Q&A. All right, so one more time, if you haven't set up your dev work, I think it's like 1.5 easy steps. So the first step is to just follow the link to Dojo setup and create an Einstein Analytics dev work. So now it's called Tableau CRM. There is an optional step, which is to run what's called the Trailhead Data Manager. And what this does is it just essentially recreates the base data, but it has current quarter dates, which can be helpful when reporting. It doesn't really matter so much today, so you don't have to do number 2. I know some of you have had issues in the past running the Trailhead Data Manager. I can't explain why it works for some of us and not all of us. I apologize. All right, so let's get going. Great to see more of you joining in. All right, so who am I? So my name is David Carnes. I founded OpFocus in 2006, having started working on the platform in 2005. I am a sumo fan, though it has been many years since I've actually watched a sumo match, so maybe I'm not a fan anymore. But sumo is such an interesting sport. There are 6 main tournaments each year. 3 of them are in Tokyo, and then 1 is in Osaka, 1 is in Fukuoka, and 1 is in Nagoya. And these events go for, I think it's 15 days, either 14 days or 15 days. And that's sad, I can't remember. But they kind of build up to when the champions play the champions. I actually had this one experience where I was in a hospital for a month in Japan, and I sat every day and watched sumo with my roommates in the hospital room that I was in, and it was just great. It was such an interesting thing. OpFocus is a consulting shop. We're based across the US and Canada. We have about 50 people on our team. We're a gold Salesforce partner, and we work with SaaS companies on their revenue operations. All right, one last call for setting up the dev work. Again, if this is your first time in the Dojo, please take a moment to set up your own separate dev work, and then you can follow right along. So the link, Kyle's been dropping it in. And thank you so much, Kyle, for acting as our host again. Kyle is the events manager at OpFocus. Great. All right, let's dive in. Oops, going the wrong way. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to do a little bit of a repeat, but more focused on hands-on exercises. And by repeat, what I mean is that this is part 2 of the Digging into Report Types. Just to share with you in case you're new to the Dashboard Dojo. So each time we do a Dojo, we put the links up on the website. This is probably how most of you got here, is registering on the website. But just to point out that we do have all of the recordings up on the Resources tab. And you can just dig right in, watch them at your own pace if that's helpful. And you can see the Digging into Report Types, the first session. You can see some other sessions that I've done, just that if I speak to a user group. So this was for the Montevideo, Uruguay user group, which some of you joined. And then the 3 formulas, topics, and so on. So anytime I speak at an event, I try to put the recording up here in case that's helpful. All right, great. So we're going to talk about the data foundation for reports, which is report types. We'll talk about standard report types. We'll do a quick exercise on hiding report types. This is still done through Classic. Then we're going to shift gears and spend the rest of the time on custom report types. So this is such an important topic. There are more than 50 things in Salesforce that you can't report on any other way unless you first create a custom report type. So we'll go through the basics. We'll talk about joins. We'll talk about adding fields via lookup. And then we'll talk about Evan Ponter's idea of deluxe report types and why those are pretty meaningful. So pretty much for each one of these topics, we're going to do an exercise, and then we'll finally wrap up with, many of you might not be sysadmins in your environment. So how can you get the right permissions to allow you to do the stuff in your own Salesforce instance? If you're not a sysadmin, we'll talk about how that can be done so that you can explain it to the admins in your environment. All right. Yes, we will be recording today as well. Yep, so we record all the sessions and put them onto the resources tab of the Dashboard Dōjō website. Great. All right, so let's get started with report types. So, oh, this is too funny. Okay, so these are really foundations. I think this has probably been the best visual. If you think of like building a new house, in order to get to the framing and you're putting in windows and doors and eventually a roof, you kind of need a foundation in place. And this is true with reporting. So there are about 70 or so standard report types. And if one of those doesn't fit your need, and this is increasingly true as Salesforce keeps rolling in more objects, those objects don't have report types necessarily. Someone has to go create a custom report type. But the report types, these are the data foundations, which all reports are built on. So this is your first and most important choice that you're going to make. There are essentially three kinds of them. I've always thought of them as being two kinds, but there are essentially three kinds. The standard ones, there are about 77 of them. And then there are a few that are introduced when you enable another feature. That's true for historical trending, which you can do in 3 standard objects and up to 3 custom objects. If you enable that on one of the objects, it will create a custom report type for you. So that effectively is a pre-configured report type. And then finally, there are the custom report types. So OpFocus has about 50 people. We probably have at least 75 report types, custom report types in our system. Some of them are ancient. They need to be archived. Others are really vital to what we do. So it's interesting how these occur. Let's dive right into our first. Let's actually talk about the standard report types. So I spent a lot of time on this in the last session. I think it's really important to just get in and sort of, get your hands in the soil. If you're planting flowers for the spring, some of us, it's more spring than where I am. We had 10 inches of snow. I was in Vermont this weekend. It was a lot of snow, which was nuts. It was fun. But if you're getting out and planting flowers, you're going to get your fingers into the soil and just see like how good is the soil. I want you to think of that with standard report types. So for the leads object out of the box, there are 3 report types, and they have different purposes to them. So there's the one called leads, and that has all the lead fields, plus it has a couple of special fields. That's my word for it. Special fields that do not appear in the list under the object manager, the list of lead fields, and they do not appear as something that you can put on a page layout, but Salesforce created them essentially as system formulas that we can use in reporting. So there are 2 that I found on the lead report type, converted and unread by owner, and those are kind of meaningful potentially for reporting. If you chose the second report type, the standard report type, leads with converted lead information, I thought this was kind of interesting. So if you take a step back and think about what happens when you convert a lead, Salesforce will create an account, or you can match to an existing account. Salesforce will create a contact, or you can match to an existing contact. And if you wish, Salesforce will create an opportunity. But interestingly, they gave us access to all of the opportunity fields, standard and custom, only 3 contact fields and 0 account fields. So if you want to do more with this, you would actually, if you need to get at the account fields of a converted lead, we would actually want to create a custom report type for that. The third type is on lead history. This includes all lead fields plus those few special fields. And then it also has history data. So there are 9 fields that are related to history, such as what was the edit date, who made the edit, what was the old value, what's the new value. And these special fields can be used in filters. They can also be displayed in columns. They can be used in groupings. So there's a number of things we can do with these. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I want to encourage you to take advantage of these special sort of nuances to the standard report types, and also dive in feet first into the custom report types. So what do I mean by explore? Well, what I want you to do, in fact, before we do this exercise, let's actually just go in and look at one of these. So if I go to the reports tab and I create a new report, and I want to explore that one, leads with converted lead information. What you can do is just start creating a report, click continue, and then expand the field section and maybe collapse these just to see what is it that you get. And what's nice is in the parentheses, it gives us how many columns are included. So for these standard objects, it gives us the main opportunity fields in this case, and then you have a separate section below for custom fields. In Enterprise Edition, you could have 500 custom fields. So that could be a lot. There could be a lot of fields that are in this standard report type. But this is how this is organized. And this is how I could tell that there were only 3 contact-related fields and 0 account-related fields. In fact, there's probably only one, which is the account name for that. And it looks like one of the 3 contact fields is the contact's account repeated. So it's even less information. Okay, so this is how you can figure out what's in a standard report type. I'd like you to do this exact thing. So for our first exercise, what I'd like you to do is in your system. So our new Senior Vice President of Worldwide Support wants to know what can be included in a support report. Okay, so let's actually just go take a look at one. And this might be one that you've never even looked at. There's one called the Case Lifecycle Report. And I want you to actually just make a quick list of what objects are included with this, and if you can tell what special fields are included. So maybe you could just take a moment. So within your system, create a new report using the Case Lifecycle Report standard report type. And then if you expand that field section on the left, let's just take a look. I'm going to guess most of us have never actually looked at this to see what's in there. So if you just take a moment. So you might say, well, how do you know what's a special field? Well, you kind of get a feeling for it. I actually did a little more digging than that. I looked at under Object Manager, what are all the fields that are listed? I looked on the page layout, what fields can be added to a page layout, which is pretty much the same thing as what's on the Object Manager. And then looking at the report type list, all of these fields here, every now and then you can get a sense of what's not a standard thing that must be a system generated formula. So if we were to do this same exercise, and I'll just show you the answer here. If we go to the Reports tab, create a new report, we're going to choose the the case lifecycle. And then we're just going to go right in here, expand that fields, that caret over here on the left. So we'll show the fields. And what I like to do is just collapse these, and we can get a sense of what are all the objects. And some of these things look like they might be objects, but they're not objects. So they're just sort of categories within the same object. So there are a bunch of segments here related to account, for example. But it looks like we have case history, and that's a separate object than the case object. So that's so we have case history owner, case status, case history last modified, and then there's a duration. So this is tracking how long something is in each of the statuses. So that's kind of interesting. That's a separate object outside of the case object. Then we have our case fields. There are 28 standard fields. And it looks like in my system, I have 13 custom fields in here. Then if we come down here, there's another object called case comments. Now this is kind of interesting. This is a standard report type, and Salesforce is not only giving us case information, but it's giving us a child object over here for case history, and it's giving us another child object over here for case comments. Now, this is something we can't even do with custom report types. We can't do this kind of structure that goes down the chain in two different directions. Now, this online case capture information, these are essentially contact fields that are stored on the case itself. So this isn't another custom object or another object. And then there's clearly the contact object, the account object, and it looks like that's it. So it looks like we have a couple of objects in the list here: case history, case comments, accounts, contacts, along with the case object. There's a whole pile of objects here. And again, just this number of objects, we can't replicate this exact thing with a custom report type. This is why these standard report types are kind of vital. So let's try to answer the other question about these special fields. Now, I would argue that probably the age field is a special field. This is one that isn't available on a page layout. The open field, interestingly, the closed field is available, but age and open is not. Now, these can be useful. If I were to go ahead and add it looks like it's already here. This is essentially a system-generated checkbox, and you can use this to count. So sometimes these fields can be useful. We could do an average age, or I could do the sum of the opens. It looks like I'm falling prey to if you don't click apply, it doesn't save it for you. Okay, so let me clean this up. Let me just run this. And the average age is going to be a mess because this is not real data. Didn't I? I summed it up. Okay, so where's my data? Oh, here it is. Okay. So I feel like something's missing here. Here we go. So we can see the opens here and the duration, and we can see the total number open. So that's a system generated special field, and it's allowing us to do something interesting. There are similar fields, and then some of the other opportunity report types, there are some really interesting special fields. All right, when we met last time, we talked about hiding report types. I just showed you how to do it. If you switch to Salesforce Classic and then go to create a new report, there is a checkbox that an administrator can use to select report types to hide. If you pick the ones you want to hide and just click on the green check marks, they turn to X's and then they're gone and no longer available to be selected. So in this case, what I'd like you to do is, yeah, why don't I just show you this? So if we just jump over to Classic for a second, if I go to the reports type, if I go to the reports tab, sorry, and I go to create a new report. Now, because I'm an admin, I have this special superpower. This is not available in Lightning yet. It is on the roadmap in Lightning for one of the next number of few releases. But if I go ahead and create a new report in Classic, there's this feature. It's been around for years. And if I choose it, what I can do is I can search on something like contacts or contracts or orders, and I can go ahead and just click on the X and it will now be hidden. This can no longer be selected. Now, if somebody created 100 reports last year using this report type, those reports are fine, but nobody can now use this report type again. It's literally gone. So what I'd like you to do as a quick exercise is let's just clean up our list of report types. We don't use the contracts object. I'm guessing many of you don't either. You can actually go ahead and hide these report types if you're not using the functionality. So what I'd like you to do is in your system, go into Classic. So switch to Classic, find the Reports tab, create a new report, and then check that box that says Select Report Types to Hide. And we want to hide all of the ones that have the word contracts in them, contracts with orders and contracts with orders and products and so on. All right, so George says he's knocked it off. These are pretty straightforward, these exercises today, but I do think they're worthwhile. So once you've hidden one of these, once you've hidden like this campaigns with contacts, I just did a different example, but if I switch back to Lightning and go to create a new report, it's gone. It can't be used anymore. So that can be handy. Another reason why I mention it is some of you are inheriting systems that have been around for a while, and maybe you can't find a report type. I've had that happen a few times. Somebody's like, it should be here. I know it should be here, but I can't see it. Somebody might have hidden it on you before you ever arrived. Okay, so if you don't use orders, you don't use contracts, if you don't use Service Cloud, you can go ahead and hide report types, and they're just fewer for people to sort of get lost in. Another example would be a new category here that's been added in the last couple of years, this feature called individuals. So this has to do with tracking people across, like we might have someone's Gmail address, they might register, we have some kind of a B2C context, and then we also work with them as a business. Salesforce has introduced functionality that allows us to track individuals, in part because places like the European Union want to allow people to ask to, in fact, they mandated that you be able to purge all of your data within a company's databases. And so if you're not using that functionality, you could hide those report types as well. That's the feature called individuals. There are 2 report types under there. All right, so let's go on to the next thing. Let's talk about custom report types. So we didn't spend a ton of time on standard report types, and I think most of us are pretty familiar. The main thing with the standard report types is I wanted to encourage you to explore, sort of like think of them all over again. Maybe it's like with your significant other, going on a date and, finding special new things to talk about. Similar with report types, the standard ones, there's a bunch of stuff that a lot of people we just don't realize it's there unless you go explore. So Kyle, could we post the first poll? I'm just curious, maybe you guys could, I don't remember from last time, and I know we have some different folks on today's, just your experience with report types, custom report types. If you could just take a moment. Have you ever created a custom report type? So yes, no, yes, once or twice, yes, many times. So I think we have too many yeses, Kyle, one too many yeses. So how do we differentiate between yes and yes once or twice and yes many times? Yes, emphatically. All right, so that's great. So many of us have done it multiple times. And for one of you that has never done it, I'm so glad you're here and that you'll get a chance to do it now. This is fantastic. All right, so what is a custom report type? Well, we said that report types are a reporting foundation. Well, that's true of a custom report type as well, except we're in the driver's seat. We can say what's on it and what's off of it. We can define which fields are selected as columns by default. We can remove fields. We can relabel fields. We can specify which objects are included and how. So we've got a number of things we can do. We can essentially build a data foundation, and once it's saved, then other users can create reports on top of it. So we can choose the core objects, which are joined. We can also specify how they're joined. So we can have 4 core objects, up to 4. I'd say most of them that I create are 2 objects, but you could have a 3rd and sometimes even have a 4th object. There is this other feature we're going to talk about, which is so powerful, and I think only like 0.5% of us have ever even gotten near, which is the ability to include fields via lookup. And we can reach up from the core object, we can reach up to 60 objects, and we can pull down fields and essentially flatten out the database within the custom report type. So we're going to do that example in a few minutes. I mentioned we can specify which fields are available to be used. We can relabel them. We can say which ones are pre-selected by default. The other big thing with custom report types is that list is growing. It's over 50 items that we can't report on any other way other than to first create a custom report type. So an example would be chatter or dashboards, or there's all sorts of objects that are really obscure that you can't report on unless somebody takes the time to do what we're going to do right now. The other big thing about custom report types is it supports a different type of join called a left outer join. And you can see on the bottom screenshot here, this is a really important concept. And if you take nothing away from today, please walk away from this with the idea that joins are super important and just understanding the nature of the joins. So in this case, this is what's called a left outer join, where we have two objects, the A and the B, and I want everything in the A. And if there are B's that are related to the A's, great, but I want everything in the A. And you can see here within the diagram, and then this bottom diagram, it's going to give me all the A records that match our filter criteria. And if there are associated B records, great, but don't sweat it if there aren't. So this is a really, really important topic that we can do. Otherwise, it's an equijoin, and we only see an A if there's an associated B, and we only see a B if there's an associated A. So super important topic. So let's do a quick example of this. So our senior vice president of worldwide support, she swears, she keeps cursing. We have to talk to her about this, but she swears she was able to report on case and the related chatter, so cases and the related chatter at her last company. So our solution is, well, that's not available out of the box. There is no standard report type. I have looked and looked. I have flipped over stones. I can't find it. So we're going to create a custom report type called cases with chatter. And I'll walk you through this, and we're going to do a couple of different examples after this. But let's go ahead and create the custom report type, and it's going to look like this: cases as the primary object, and case feed is the object name for chatter under a case. And we're going to leave it as an inner join. And by inner join, I mean, you see the A, it's that intersection of A and B. So in order to have an A, there must be a B. So for this, just note that no cases will appear that have no chatter. So cases that have no chatter will not appear in these report results. This is super critical that that's clear. And you can tell by the diagram here that that's true. It's the intersection of these two objects, cases and case feed. So we have a couple of other requirements here. It says, let's remove the client OAuth link field. I didn't know that that was a field. And we're going to make the account name, body, and best comment. We're going to set that by default so that anytime somebody creates a report using this report type, they'll see those columns set by default. So let's go ahead and do this example, and then I'll have you do some exercises. So the place where we go create report types, custom report types, and where we manage them is under setup. So if you're not an admin in your environment, you're going to put your admin hat on now. And to get to setup, we click on the gear and choose setup. And that's where I'm looking right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down on the left-hand side, expand feature settings, analytics, reports, and dashboards. We're going to go to report types. You could also just type in the word report types in the quick find. But again, we're under setup, feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, and report types. And you can see here my list is growing. I just keep adding and tinkering and stuff. But what we're going to do here, we're going to go ahead and click the new custom report type button. Oh, you know, as my list is growing, I do want to admonish any of you that did not look at your list before you click that new button. This button should be, just like with custom fields, this button should be like under glass, and you have to break the glass with a little stick in order to create something new, because we have so many of the same report types over and over, and it becomes a mess. So please just take a peek. It looks like I've already created this one, but I put an XXX after it. So that doesn't mean that it's an adult website. That just means that I want to use the same name over again. So again, we're under setup. We're on the report type page. We're going to go ahead and click the new custom report type button. And our primary object here is going to be cases. Now, before we move on from this page, just take a peek at all the things that we can report on. Asset state periods. I have never seen it before. I don't know what it is. I don't even frankly know if I want to know what it is. There's so much stuff in here that we can report on if we first create a custom report type. So this is such a useful place to come rummage around every now and then, because like stamps assignment. Are these postal stamps? What are they? I don't know what it is. Recommendations, strategy metrics, not a clue. I don't know what it is. Performance cycles, party consents. That's kind of interesting. Does that mean you have to consent to somebody going to your party? Probably not. Okay, let's choose cases. And let's call this cases with chatter. I'll often copy the description down. If I use the via lookup, and we'll talk about that in a minute, I might list out each of the objects that are involved. So if you include 10 objects via lookup, you might include them in the description to help your report writer, somebody who creates a report, they can see this description. Let's go ahead and put this in the customer support category. So I think I mentioned last time, these categories are not changeable at this point. We are stuck with the ones that are here. For admin type stuff, you might put something into administrative reports. When you create custom objects, those are dropped into the other reports category, so you can find them there. But for this, because it's cases as the primary object, I'll probably put it in the customer support. Now, when you create a custom report type, by default, it's in development. This is sort of a sandbox that existed before sandboxes. Let's go ahead and make it deployed. If it's in development, only sysadmins will be able to see what you build. Only sysadmins can use it or build stuff with it. So we might as well make it deployed. So we chose cases as the primary object. We labeled it cases with chatter. I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now I'm going to choose the related object. And we're going to choose the case feed. Look at these things here, case comments, emails. So these are all objects that have a master detail or a lookup up to the case object. So I'm going to choose case feed. Interestingly, I can choose another object. Let's see what's here. Oh, comments can be related to chatter post, which can be related. So I'm not going to do that, but you can see here that you can get more. It can get more interesting. If I choose comments here, it says, we can go no further. I don't want the third object, so I'm going to get rid of it. I'm just going to have cases, and as my child, case feed, and I'm going to leave it as this equijoin. Now, if I chose this second one here, it says A records may or may not have related B records. This would create the left outer join. I don't want that in this case. I think the requirements were we needed just the equijoin one, so we'll leave it at that. I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now, for many of us, we're now done. We've created our report type. We can tell the user who wants to create the report, go crazy. They can now go create reports using this report type. But our requirements said, could we do one more thing? And the one more thing is in this section here called edit layout. What we can do is edit the layout, and we can scroll down and we can make some other fields required. So I think we said we want to make not required, but make them visible by default, checked by default. So account name, body, and best comment. So account name, literally, I can just click on it. I can relabel it here. I can make it set by default. Best comment and body, I can multi-select. So on my Mac, I hold down Shift and I can select multiples. And I can double click on that and I can check them by default here. And then I'll click OK. And then we said we're going to remove the client OAuth. So I'm going to click on it, drag it off, and I'm going to let it go over here. And you see the double black lines. When that gets extra bold, then you know you've got the right drop zone. You can let go of it and it'll remove it. Okay, so we just created our first report type. I'm good to go. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And again, what we've just done is we've now created a foundation that our users can go build reports with. So if I go back to the reports type, this reports tab, this is available instantly. And I put it under customer support reports, and it usually appears down at the bottom. It's alphabetical. So there are the standard ones, and then there are the custom ones, alphabetical behind it. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And we can see here that the account name was included, case number was there, the best comment in the body. And then that OAuth link field won't even be here. It's just gone. I can't select it. All right, so I'm going to ask you to, actually, no, we'll do one more topic here. I did mention the joins. So there are equijoins where in order to have an A, you have to have a B. In order to have a B, you have to have an A. Many of the out-of-the-box report categories are this way. So if you create a report on accounts and contacts, you'll never get an orphaned contact, or you'll never have an account that has no contacts. So many of the out-of-the-box reports are this way, the out-of-the-box report types. We can create custom report types that take advantage of that second choice, that left outer join that gives you the full of the core object and the intersection with the child object. So an example there would be accounts with or without opportunities. I think we talked about that last time. Opportunities with or without products, accounts with or without contacts, and so on. Let's actually have you punch out 3 custom report types really quickly. So if we're embracing account-based marketing, this is our scenario, ABM, and we need to report on progress with target accounts. A great way to do this, a fantastic way to do this, an incredible, perfect way to support this is to create these few report types. And one of them would be accounts with or without opportunities. That's kind of an obvious one, so that we could report on our target accounts. Give me all the target accounts, and if they have open opportunities, great, show me those too. But if they don't have open opportunities, still show me the targets. Well, I want you to do the same for accounts with or without cases. You should be able to punch that out in 15 seconds and then save it and do the same accounts with or without contacts and do the same accounts with or within. Oh, that's weird. That's not a curveball. That's a typo. All right, you know what? I'm going to fix that because I don't want you guys getting confused. That's too funny. Accounts with or within. So please do this exercise. If you're not clear where you should be, you want to do this under setup. So if you click on setup and then expand feature settings, analytics, we want to get down under reports and dashboards and go to report types. And I want you to create 3 custom report types. So one of them is accounts with or without cases. Another is accounts with or without contacts, and then accounts with or without assets. All right, maybe one of you could drop into the chat when you've completed the 3. And it does seem like a lot that I'm asking you to carry 3, but I also want you to get over the hump of thinking this is a big deal, because it's really not a big deal to create a couple of report types like this. So we're under setup and we're creating 3 custom report types. What I'll do is I'll create the first one. And you guys, if you haven't finished, you can finish while I show you about creating the first one. And then we'll keep moving on because I've got a couple of other cool things that I want us to work on today. So back under setup, we're going to do accounts with or without cases. So under setup, we go to feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, report types, and we'll create accounts with or without cases. So this is really just a couple of clicks. I'll click new custom report type. We're going to choose the accounts object here. We'll give it a label, accounts with or without cases. Now, for any of you that are in a system that's older, you may notice shorthand, and the shorthand often looks like this, W/ or W/O. And the reason is Salesforce used to give us a tiny number of characters, like 20 characters. And then over time, they expanded the length of the label. So some of you with older systems might have real shorthand in there. Now it's a bit roomier. I'm going to go ahead and throw this into the account and contact. So typically what I'll do is put whatever the primary object is, I'll put it in that category. Go ahead and make it deployed. We'll click next. Now what we need to do on this screen is choose the child object. So accounts probably has the most children of all the objects in the system. So we'll see a long list here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on click to relate another object. You can see here all the objects in here in this system. Now in your production org, you might have 500 custom objects. If you have an unlimited edition system, there could be many, 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 many more things in here from apps that you've installed and other things, integrations and whatnot. I'm just going to choose cases, and I'm going to choose A records may or may not have related B records. This is what's giving us the with or without. Thank you, Manuel and George, for letting me know. That's great. So this is it. This is our first one. Oh, this is great. So Jay made a comment, shorter report types do make it easier to see them when in edit mode when building reports. Yes, I think that's, thank you, Dawn. I'm going to go ahead and click save. And this is our first one here. And just to point out one other thing, there are two ways that you can see what report type a report is built on. When you're editing a report, you can see it right here in the edit, the Lightning report builder. It's in gray here. And when you run the report, you can see it right up here at the top. It says report : this is the report type here. So if I go to create a new report on my accounts with or without cases, it's right here. Looks like I've created multiple of them over time. Did I really leave the name like that? Oh, here it is. Here's the new one. So I've created multiple. Shame on me. I have two with the very similar names. I'm going to go ahead and click continue, and you can see here the report type name visible in the edit environment. We can also see it in the run environment. All right, great. So I hope you guys are doing well with that. Let's go on to the next thing. So this is something we talked about last week. This is a very, very special capability, and I feel like less than 1% of report writers ever even know this is possible. And this is true of consultants, this is true of architects, this is true of a lot of us that just don't ever quite click on that feature that lets us add fields related via lookup. And you can see it over here on the right of my screen. You know, you first have to be looking at a custom report type in setup. So that's the first hurdle. And then you have to edit the layout, and it's tucked over here. And it's this little teeny link over here. And we can add more fields. And you can add fields from up to 60 parent objects, and you can go up to 5 hierarchy levels. And this essentially allows you to pick and choose and pull things down into this report type. So where this is super, super powerful is something like orders or assets. And you want to report on assets. I was just meeting with our CEO, and we were talking about time entries. And the first thing I thought is, ooh, we should have set this up for her so that she could pull in time entry related stuff from related projects and contracts and opportunities, and just pull them all in to have it available at that lowest level. So really, really important, this feature. Now, one just caveat with this. So there's been a feature that was added in the winter release. It's going to become GA in the summer release, which is this auto add to custom report types. This works beautifully with custom report types in all cases, except for the objects that are related via lookup. Fields, custom fields, and that it kind of makes sense, but you have to be aware of it. So if I add fields from 10 other objects onto my report type, and if my report types is on opportunities, if I add a custom field on opportunities, great. That custom field will be auto added when this box is checked. That custom field will be added to the report type. But if I have fields from 10 other objects pulled in via lookup, custom fields added to those objects will not appear in your report types. I just want to make that clear. So this seems like a super duper feature, but it does not relate to fields related via lookup. Okay, so let's go do a quick example. So we're considering acquiring another company, my gosh, and they make heavy use of the assets object in Salesforce. So we've been asked to analyze asset type distribution across industries, billing country, product family. And we just want to pull in a bunch of stuff so that we have it at the asset level. And then we can create really rich reports on that lowest level piece of information, the asset. So we're going to create a custom report type on assets, just one object. And then we're going to pull in fields from a bunch of other objects. So this is probably one of the most powerful things we'll talk about in the Dōjō that most of us don't realize is possible. So we're going to go under setup. We're going to go back under report types. We're going to create a new custom report type on assets. And why don't we go so far as to call this like assets deluxe or something like that? Let's call this assets deluxe. So the word deluxe comes from Evan Ponters. I've shared his blog before, and he's done a lot of speaking and writing on this topic. And we might include so assets with associated, we could say accounts, what was in the exercise, products, etc. We could list more objects. I'm going to put this one into customer support maybe is where that might go. So I'm just creating a custom report type on the asset object. And that's it. This is the only object. I'm just going to go ahead and click save here. So I'm creating this report on one object, assets. But now what I'm going to do is go down and edit the layout. And we're going to go right into the add fields related via lookup. And this is where, in fact, before we do it, we could even just prepare ourselves. We could create a section called account fields. We can create another section called product fields. So right here, I can use the create new section button. So once again, I've just moved kind of quickly. We created a report type called assets deluxe. Once you create the report type, we're going to just go down to that bottom and click edit layout. We're going to create two new sections. One we'll call account fields. And then the other one we'll call product fields. And now what we can do is we can add fields via lookup and we can move them into these sections. Okay, so let's do that. So to support this analysis we're going to do, I click on the link to add fields via lookup. I'm going to go ahead and choose the account object. And let's go find those couple of fields. The billing country, I think, was one, and the industry. So this is using on the asset, there's a lookup field to the account, and we're taking advantage of that. We don't even care about the account name at this point. We just want to know what country and what industry, and this can help us do our analysis. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And what Salesforce does is it drops those at the top, in the top section at the bottom. And what I can do is highlight them both and drag them down. I might highlight them both again, double click on them, and I can do a couple things. I probably want to clean this up. Assets, account, billing, country is a mouthful. I'm just going to relabel it to country. I'm going to do the same with industry, just relabel it. And let's set those by default. So we can now do 59 more objects. We're not going to do that much, but let's go ahead and click add fields related via lookup, and let's do the product object. And I think we wanted product family and product name. Let's go ahead and click OK. Once again, let's drag those down. Let's double click on both of them. We could clean up the names to product name and product family, and we could check them both by default. I'm moving a little quickly, just not noticing the time. I'm going to go ahead and click save. This is now ready for use. We've now just created a report type that is on assets, but includes some really specific things, and that would allow us to report on all assets in the system. I do want to make a very important point. If I come back here and I use the out of the box, there is an out of the box report type on accounts with assets. Okay, out of the box, there is one here. It's a standard report type called accounts with assets. You will only ever see assets that have an associated account. Now, that may be true for 99% of the assets in your system, but what if they're ones where the company went out of business, but the asset's still out there? If you create that report type the way we just did, you'll see all assets, including orphaned assets. All right, great. So I do want to do one more exercise, and then we'll wrap up and take questions. So this exercise is kind of cool. It's creating a report type on dashboards and their components. So the time has come, everyone. It is now time. It's Earth Day. We need to clean up our dashboards. So especially if you're in a big company, you might literally have thousands of dashboards. So what's kind of cool is we can create a report type on dashboards and their components. And I want to see all dashboards, whether or not there are any components. So we're going to choose that A records may or may not have related B records. Once you save that, what I want you to do is do two via lookups and pull in information about the running user in the dashboard. Are they even an active user? Because if they're not, that dashboard's broken. I can promise you. I want to know if that user's active, I want to know their email, their role, and their title. I also want to know who it's created by. Are they active? What's their email, their role, and their title? We could do a third section. We could use the last modified lookup, and we could say, the person who last modified this, are they still at our company? We see this stuff all the time, especially with larger organizations. where there are dashboards that somebody created 10 years ago that nobody's looked at forever. Okay, so I want you to create a custom report type on dashboards and their components, and then use the via lookup to pull in running user fields, 4 of them, and created by fields, 4 of them. All right, Jennifer agrees. Oh my God, yes. Haha, so much cleanup on reports and dashboards used. Yes. So Jay asked the question, has there been any chatter updating report types to a Lightning type UI? Yes, Jay. So it's in the report, it's in the report and dashboard roadmap. And I actually saw a mock-up. I saw a mock-up a couple of weeks ago, which was super cool to meet with the report and dashboard team and just kind of see some of the sketches of what's coming. It's going to be great. It's going to be such a much more intuitive way to step through that first perilous step of selecting a report type. Evan, who I talk about a lot, he talks about it as being the first filter on a report, and I totally agree with him. When you select a report type, you're essentially boxing yourself in. So if you've chosen the wrong report type. All right, I haven't looked at questions. Looks like somebody might have asked one. Just to clarify, when relating the object, you are restricted to objects connected to each other. Yes. Yeah, so good point. And that's true in 2 different ways. So thank you for asking the question. When you create your report type, you can choose objects that are below. So those would be a child object that has a lookup or master detail. So we did accounts with or without contacts or cases. So you choose the account as your primary object, and you can see child objects that have a master detail or a lookup up to that primary object. When you use the via lookups, you're actually going up above the primary object. So you're going up through to a parent account, or from an asset up to an account. You could go up to the account owner, and so on. So you can walk up your tree. Great question. All right. So I'm very curious how you guys have done with this exercise. It's such a fun one for realizing that not only can we create a report on dashboards, but we can really put in some really meaningful information. Yeah, so Jay asked the question, so we really only need to build custom report types with a child object, and then we can build up. And this is the whole point of what Evan wrote about with deluxe report types, that you can go down to a very particular level and pull up. In fact, Evan goes so far as to say, remove all of your standard report types, create 1 deluxe report type per object, and just flatten your database, and then report on the child. You'd have 1 for accounts, deluxe, 1 for opportunities, deluxe, and you pull in all these related objects and essentially flatten the database. I do see that there are benefits to that. I probably haven't gone quite so far as to advocate hiding all of your standard report types, but there's definitely a use case for both, I would say. All right, I'm gonna keep going, just noticing the time. So I've mentioned Evan's blog before. It's just reportforce.blog. So Evan Ponter and Aaron Creer have done a wonderful job, and they're going deep. This is such good stuff that they're writing about. So he's really done a lot of writing. Evan has done a lot of writing on this concept of deluxe report types. And you can see in the screenshot here, contacts deluxe, leads deluxe, opportunities deluxe, and so on. Yeah, so Dawn says 1 row represents, one row represents sort of the lowest level object, but you can pull in related fields from objects above using this via lookup field, this via lookup capability. All right, so I'm going to skip this and go right to, I do want to mention that this idea of custom report type permissions. So if you're not a sysadmin, we can create a permission set that gives you these powers, and it's a checkbox called Manage Custom Report Types, which could be added to your profile or it could be created within a permission set. So typically what we'd say is to create a permission set for super users and include that in there if you want to go that far. I wrote a blog article on this. It's just the bit.ly link here, report_permissions. which goes through the 31 report and dashboard permissions and makes suggestions on how to allocate them out, because some of these permissions are great and they're not assigned to anyone other than a sysadmin. All right, so I mentioned the Reportforce blog. Just as a recap for today, we've talked about the standard report types, how to hide them, sort of special things about each of the standard report types. Some of those special things you can't do any other way. So this is one of the reasons why I do think it's good to explore and really just try to make the most use. We've got to like beg, borrow, and steal to get done what we need to get done. It is also super valuable to be able to build and be confident with custom report types. So we talked about the basics, we talked about join, we talked about adding fields related by a lookup. And then I did share with you about Evan's concept of deluxe report types, which has just been so meaningful to so many of us who have a child object like time. In the OpFocus system, we track time. Time is associated to projects. Projects are associated to contracts. Contracts are associated to opportunities. Opportunities are associated to accounts. Accounts were sold by somebody. We can actually pull all that information in, as long as I didn't go over 5 levels high there. We can pull data in and flatten it out, and we can relate up to 60 objects using that related via lookup capability. So we also spent a moment on permissions for managing report types, and Evan can drop that link in the blog. It's just the report permissions, the bit.ly report _ permissions is a worthwhile read. All right, so our next session is on May 12th. I'd love to have you join us. That registration link is up on the Dashboard Dōjō site. I thought to shift gears. We've been really sort of hardcore under the hood with stuff, and I'd like to actually just take a total fresh perspective. What if we're an end user, we have no awareness of reporting? What can we get out of reporting? So there are some real nice features that can make an end user's life easier. Things like favorites, the ability to add charts to reports in the run environment, the ability to look at filters and adjust filters in the run environment, the ability to click on things and drill down. These are all things that I want you to teach your end users. And I want you all to be confident with as well. We'll come up with a topic for a second session in the month of May. And I think it'll be reporting for sales leaders. So very specific things about reporting features for sales leaders, but we'll sort that out. I do have 2 classes coming up in June. So I'm teaching my 5-day admin class and also the 2-day hands-on report and dashboard workshop. So those are both classes are coming up in June. And we probably have just a minute or two, see if we have any other questions in the pile. And it looks like, so is there a way to create a report where we can see who created reports? Yes. I think there is. So I'm just going to jump in to try to answer that. So the question is, can we create a report kind of like we did with dashboards? So if we go to, and I've never done this, so I'm kind of excited about this. So we're going to go ahead and create a report on reports. And I'm going to call this Reports Deluxe. Why not? And once I figure it out, I might come back in here and say what other objects in the description. I might put this into administrative reports, make it deployed. But really what I'm excited about is there is the ability to pull in report feeds. You could also see which reports support dashboard components, but I'm not going to look at those. I'm just going to get rid of the second object, save it. But what I want to do is see if we can, through the edit layout capability, see what we can get at. So we can see who it's created by, last modified by, and we can see folder information. So this is creating a report on reports. So creating a report type on reports and using the add related fields via lookup. And the question was, can we see who created reports that are inactive users? So the answer would be yes. So if I go to created by, there is the active field right there, and you could say whether it's active or not using that related lookup. So happy for you guys with that. Super cool. I think we covered a lot of good ground today. George, thank you for suggesting an idea for a future topic. I'm going to go ahead and save the chat so I don't lose it. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It's really a pleasure spending the time with you and talking through this stuff. I think most of you have my email address, or you can find me on Twitter. Please reach out if you have ideas for sessions. So look forward to speaking with you guys again soon. Thanks for joining. Thank you so much, Kyle, as well.
Of course. Thank you, everyone.